When companies reach real scale, the challenge isn't vision, it's execution, when speed matters and mistakes are expensive. Today's guest, Sean Everett, is brought in by Fortune 100 executives, private equity firms, sovereign wealth funds, and founders when growth gets complex. He's built and scaled AI, SaaS, and M&A platforms used by billions, driven 15 to 90% monthly growth, and attracted acquisition interest from Apple and Box. In this episode, we dive into what actually works when scaling gets real and messy. Everett, welcome to MyFinJourney.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mustafa. Pleasure to be
No,
here.
no problem, man. Sean, help us understand how you got to where you are today.
Curiosity, a lot of free time, being an only child, fascination with the internet and product and all sorts of things, technology and math, strategy. Yeah, I don't know, man. That's a hard one to sum up in like a word or a phrase, but yeah, I think
Fair
that's
enough.
really it is yeah, you just got to find your fascination and it'll take you everywhere.
So, Sean, if you don't mind me asking, do you have any kids?
I got two dogs.
Two dogs. Okay. So if you were
Hmm.
talking to your dog on one walk and you were trying to, model that behavior for your dog to have that exponential growth without, the different obstacles, what would you say?
Well, my dog can understand me a little bit, but I don't think he's really worried about exponential growth. He's more worried about treats. So I'm more just trying to keep the one dog under control because he just wants to play all day, and the other one was a rescue, so he's sort of the opposite, and he's just a little fearful of humans after what he's been through. So, but I think the core of your question was really more around what exactly was it just like how other people need to understand growth or
Yeah, what I would say is let's dive in a bit deeper, Sean, if you don't mind. I feel like you mentioned, the first dog that loves treats. Maybe let's say more short-term, pleasure-oriented. Do you feel like a lot of people operate the same way?
um well, I think it's consumer behavior versus like work behavior as sort of different environments. I think consumers inherently are busy folks and there's not necessarily enough money to go around and they're tired, so they really only want to spend money on services or products that either save time or make time fly. That's entertainment, for example, or relaxation or escapism, which makes sense because you spend all your time taking care of other people's companies, your own kids, other people, like bills, etc. In a work environment, I think that it's very hard to get away from short termism, quarterly earnings results, and we got to hit our numbers, and we've got daily stand ups and weekly or bi weekly sprints and monthly check ins with finance. And, we've all got metrics we need to hit. So it's sort of a professional sport that never ends. It's a game that never ends. It's 24/7, 365, and you don't get to see all the other players on the field, so it's much more complicated. And the rules of the game are always changing, as well as the ball and the boundaries. And so it's the most dynamic and difficult, never ending, infinite game or sport on the planet. So it takes a lot in order to be good and rise sort of above everything else. And so I think what you end up finding is if you if you can dial all the component pieces incorrectly, and that can take long-term time frames. If you can get to the point where you dial all of those things incorrectly, your growth rate can go through the roof. And so then, early earnings don't matter. I mean, a couple examples. Recently, ChatGPT, right? Like they were just a not-for-profit research institute with zero revenue. And then they've scaled the fastest revenue to like 12, $13 billion from nothing in recurring revenue per year. That's insane. And then look at Nvidia, same thing, like earnings sort of roughly flat, low growth, same thing with the stock price, and then boom, ChatGPT moment, and their stuff just goes through the roof. It just keeps going through the roof. So, and that none of that would have been possible without all of the long-term bets But the real key, the real expertise is lining up the dominoes in the correct order so that when all of those things happen and the outside force hits, then an explosion occurs. So you have to kind of do, you got to do long term, short term, and midterm all at the same time and move all of those down the field at the same time. And you have to line them all up correctly. Again, it's back to the being the most, it's the most difficult sport on the planet.
And I guess that almost feeds your curiosity because it feels like people call you in when things hit the fan and there's a real mess. So help us understand, Sean, like when do people call you in? What types of situations have you walked into? What type of change have you helped create?
Thinking of a couple cheeky stories here.
The more viral.
I think I've got it down to like two primary sorts of situations. The first one is we come in when it's not critical code red zone mode and it's more peacetime, not wartime. And it may be one of the first times on a new initiative or project or startup or whatever. And we'll give an approach, we'll give a direction, we'll give some advice. For whatever reason, and I won't get into those reasons, but often what we will hear is essentially a no. And the no is because they don't understand it or they're scared. That's really all it comes down to. And so we end up doing something, you know, smaller and then like yada yada. And then inevitably what happens is years later, we get reached back out to. And they're like, you were right. Can you help us now? And in that case, the issue is more challenging. So let's go to the other instance. The other instance is we're in a real bind, we're in a real challenge. It's critical. We have tried other things, they're not working. And so, whether last resort isn't the right way to put it, it's more like we need someone with some scar tissue to help us thread this very challenging environment needle and get us to the other side. And we may not even know what the other side looks like. So it's just like when you're playing Zelda in the beginning and the entire map is black and you don't even know what's out there. And so your job is like, hey, we think there's a castle over there and we need to go save the princess and like get the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. So that both are interesting, both are challenging and in different ways. The second one I described is more of an execution, vision, strategy challenge. The first one is a belief system, behavioral mindset challenge. And so sometimes those can combine and make it even more challenging. So a lot of times I have to be a psychologist in some ways. Sometimes I have to put on my strategy hat. Sometimes I got to put on my product hat. Sometimes my finance and econ hat. Sometimes it's like my therapist hat. And other times my design hat, my artist hat. And so like my engineer hat. And so it never ends. It's just you end up collecting a lot of hats over the years. Some are more worn out than others.
So Sean, as we dive in, let's talk about that. How do you acquire all these different types of hats?
A lot of failure. I've I've walked into like pits with punji sticks. I've walked into quicksand. I've been drowned, stabbed, shot, killed, stabbed in the back. So I've lived it, man. I mean, I've been doing this stuff since I was 13 years old, which is now 31 years later. I'm 44 years old. It was middle school. I had a Gateway 2000 computer. I grew up in Sioux City, Iowa, where that company was founded. So I was hacking away on internet products and AOL and, back when Windows was DOS and you had to type CD/win in order to get to Windows. And then like Wolfenstein 3D was the game. And so like I deleted Windows so I could free up space to hack around with the computer. And then I woke up the next day and my dad was pissed because he couldn't log into the computer and I had to go back and fix it and reinstall Windows from a fresh boot. And so like
And how difficult is that for, imagine you were speaking to a lay person who's listening to this. Like try to
uh-huh.
give an example that maybe a fifth grader would understand to say like what you did and how you fixed it
Yeah, like, have you
at the age
ever,
of like
well,
30.
a fifth grader wouldn't understand. So imagine you've never used an iPad before and somebody like gave you an iPad and you hacked around the operating system and you started messing around with the core code of the iPad. And like the first time you got it, not the first time, but you know what I mean. How? I just did it. I don't know. I just like did it. Cause you know why? Cause I wanted to play a game and I needed to free up space so I could install more from the 3.5 floppies into the disk drive there. But I was also on AOL with like 30 different chat windows having conversations and like alt tabbing between all of them. And so you start to meet people, you start to pick stuff up. Like there was stuff on the internet so you could find it a little bit. So it's the same thing today. It's just gotten much easier because you can go to ChatGPT and say, "Hey, how do you blah 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 blah," instead of having to like figure it all out yourself. But then at the same time, it's like I don't know. A lot of people don't. They haven't been. So here's an example, right? Here, you create a web application in a browser, and something's broken and you don't know what's broken and you search Stack Overflow, you search GitHub, you search all these forums, you do all this stuff, you muck around with the code. I can't figure this out. So you literally go through and you start deleting code, deleting code, deleting code until finally you get to the thing that like actually still works. And what you realize is it's the way the browser was programmed. And it's nothing to do with your code. And you go, you like this was not in the documentation. I've been beating my head against the wall
This was not my
because of
fault.
some crap decision that someone else made years ago because I don't know, they were flying out of the office at like 3:30 because they had to like go pick their kid up or some emergency happened. Like no harm, no foul, but this is the world that we live in. So until you've gone through that, and I use that as an example, but it's like across the board in business, right? And I haven't experienced everything that there is to experience. So, you know, I'm in a domain and like in my domain, like I've filled out a lot of that map and experience. Outside that domain, it's, you know, other people have a better map. But in that one, I'm decent in that one. So you just got to get in there and you got to just start like doing. And after 3 decades, like you just pick stuff up. So have you seen this movie Groundhog Day with Bill Murray? You remember where he keeps reliving the same day over and over and over again? And then he's talking to this girl at one point, and he's like, you know, I don't know if God exists, but if God exists, maybe he's just been around long enough where he's just relived the same day over and over again and played out every single scenario in that day. And so he can walk underneath the tree, and then as the kid's falling, he just catches the kid under the tree. And it's like not to say that there's a God, it's just you've been reliving that same day so many times that you know what's going to happen in that day. And you're like, that kid's going to fall out of the tree. You better go catch him. And then the dude at the other end of the phone is like, he's not going to fall out of the tree. And the kid falls out of the tree and the guy's not going to catch him. And you're like, Jesus, okay, fine. And you catch him because you're like, I know he's going to fall out of the tree. And so the real challenge and the frustration is like, I'm telling people the kid's gonna fall out of the tree and they're like and then I'm like all right, and then like we do some stuff and I leave, and then like, a couple years
A
later
couple
they
years
come back
later.
and they're like hey, the kid fell out of the tree and like can you give him surgery on him now? And I'm like, I'm not a surgeon, like I don't know I don't know how to fix your kid. Like your kid might not be, your kid's got a broken arm and I can't fix the broken arm. It's going to be broken forever. I can maybe help you heal it, but it's going to be broken forever. So
No,
does
I
that
love the
answer your
story.
question?
Definitely. And it connects to scar tissue because that broken elbow will have scar tissue. So I love how you were able
Yeah.
to bring it, full circle, Sean, for us. Let's dive a little deeper on something you said earlier. You mentioned two companies, Nvidia and OpenAI. You mentioned how maybe they had a strong short-term, medium-term, long-term, plan, and how they've experienced, let's call it exponential growth in 2024, 2025. Help us understand, Sean, how you've managed to do that maybe in your own life or for your own business or for another business.
Yeah. It's funny. I think a lot of growth people will think about this from I'm going to call this the front end of the business,
Okay.
which is, okay, we got a thing or we almost have a thing, and I'm going to go shove that thing down the market's throat. I'm going to go buy influencers. I'm going to buy ads. I'm going to tweet incessantly. I'm going to do pop-ups. I'm going to put stuff on a billboard, take this thing, right? And what I've actually found drives real growth is you go backwards. You rewind the clock. And so this is why startups and new projects are so interesting, because you can rewind all the way back to core human behavior, core human principles, animalistic behaviors. You can design that into the business, into the product, into the distribution. So by the time you get to that thing, it's like all you really have to do is you just kind of light a match, and then the gasoline's already been poured. The big, you know, pile of bonfire twigs and trees and stuff lights up immediately. And so your job as a growth person is actually to just tend to it. You got some water around the right side and the left side. You don't want it spreading outwards. Okay, I need to throw a couple more sticks in there and keep the fire going. That's a very different mindset than, oh, it's snowing, we're in a blizzard. Oh crap, like we got to go find dry wood, we got to chop it, we got to put it in a thing, we got to go find matches, we got to go find gasoline. Like, that's a very different approach. And so I think my advice and strategy is to peel back the layers and go deeper, right? Like the humans are the buyers, and pro tip, machines are the buyers and are soon about to be like the biggest buyers of all. And you got to pull back the layers into their wants and needs and desires and then design into that.
Sean, I love that explanation. I love the story. And I want to dive a little deeper. I want to pull back those layers and peel back like you're alluding to. But before I do, I want to say if you're listening to this episode, if you're listening on Apple, Apple or Spotify or whatever, tune into YouTube. You'll see Sean's great smile. But more than anything, with this episode, Sean, I feel like thanks for the smile.
Yeah, there you go.
I feel like
Help you
you're
out.
helping people, think more clearly, execute at scale, understand maybe the difference between a growth mindset and product-led growth versus a different type of scaling. So if you're listening to this episode and you're enjoying, consider liking the episode, subscribing to the channel, and continuing as we dive a little deeper. So Sean, you're talking about how growth becomes inevitable. You're talking about how your job is to tend to it. But how do you really get to that place where you understand maybe human psychology? You talked about, being a therapist. Or today, how do you get, maybe more importantly, how do you get to that point where you understand, machine psychology?
You read a lot. Go to Barnes and Noble and just go until you feel like you walk in there one day and you're like, I think, I don't know everything in here, but I feel like I've extracted a lot of the principles, and you're just getting the same principles repeated, just in different types of tomes. And I think then you'll be at the point where all this stuff starts to connect. Or you could just go straight to it, like straight to the source, and just like read some Jungian psychology or Freud, or listen to Alan Watts, or study Zen Buddhism, or religious texts, and see where they overlap. Or you could just go straight to ChatGPT and just like, how do I design triggers for core human behavior and psychology into my product? But I would caution that also improves the first order, the second, and the third order effects of those humans, of the animals, and of the planet that we live on. Because if you go up and you give people drugs and then it kills them, you're not going to have a lot of retention. So you also have to design for retention, which is the business way of saying like sustainable product development, I guess. So yeah, I think you can pick your medium. You can read about it, you can watch YouTube videos, you can chat to AI about it, but you got to go get the knowledge. And then the best way is actually trial and error. You got to make a thing, you got to put it out there, you got to see the market response, and then you got to iterate. So, I don't know. People watching this have probably heard this thing, but it's like the two pots analogy. The professor who told one half of his class, like, create the best pot possible, And then they told the other class, like, make the most pots possible. And the goal was to see like which group came back with like the perfect pot. And guess what? It was the one that just like iterated the most and did the most, created the most pots. So you got to get out there and make a lot of stuff and fall on your face and then fix it so you don't fall on your face again.
I love that, Sean. I think it resonates to a lot of listeners. But at the same time, I think I want to, prompt engineer it a bit more. I want to kind of dive a bit
Okay.
deeper and kind of maybe get more clarity around the answer. Like for you, Sean, you've been around the block. You mentioned, let's say, 31 years. You've mentioned iterating and really having a lot of scar tissue, having a lot of wounds, really investing in your own personal growth and being very hungry and curious. For you, when you look back at your own growth and your own curiosity, what has been the most efficient way to like learn and scale? Has it been reading everything? Has it been ChatGPT? Has it been talking to everybody and finding the right mentors like in those chat groups back in Iowa at the age of 13? Or has it been something
Mhm.
else? And it's hard, I know, because things compound and scale, but from your perspective.
Yeah, the medium is important, and the mediums have changed. The medium when I was in school was like the library, Encyclopedia Britannica, which is wild. And then the internet came up, and then it was game over for me. And so that lended itself to like accelerated learning. It was also college, high school, grad school, like formal training. And then it was also like on the job training with a couple like key bosses where I just sat in their office for like 3 years straight and listened in on all the conversations with board members and had my own conversations. And so you learn really rapidly that way. And then, YouTube came out and then like books, reading a ton. So you'd buy them at first and then you could read them over the internet, PDFs. Then YouTube. So now you can learn a ton on YouTube. You can get a drop of culture on TikTok. And then ChatGPT is just another accelerated learning device. But the thing I will stress is that you can't just take the one thing at face value. You have to do many things and cross reference because the right answer is going to be at the middle of all of these things. And so you need enough to be able to find where that shape is. And so you'll find that all these pieces of content and all these different mediums will create this almost invisible negative space in this road. And then what you want to do is you want to exist on that road in that negative space. So I would say you want to do multimedia, you want to do multi-perspective, and you want to do multi-learning. Like you do it yourself, you read about it, you learn about it, you hear about it, you get lectured about it. And eventually, if you just surround yourself enough with that subject matter, you will get really good really fast. And even if you don't know what that subject is, just go on social and scroll until you find something interesting. And then follow the white rabbit.
I love that, Sean. I think from my perspective, I want to understand your perspective on this because you mentioned how curious you are. You've alluded to how good you are at what you do, which we'll dive into later in the episode. When you're approaching your own growth, are you approaching it with a multi everything approach? What does that look like today? Because, in your previous answer, you touched on a lot of different things. And you also touched on how you are probably much better than the average person at a lot of those different things. Like a small example would be going to the job and working a 9 to 5 versus sitting every day in your boss's office for 3 years. It's completely different. And the amount of growth is
Mm-hmm.
completely different. So when you look at multi-channel growth or omnipresent growth, how are you doing it yourself, if you don't mind sharing with the audience?
Yeah, where I am now, well, in the past, it was like take the opportunity where you can. And I didn't always realize it at the time. Like in my boss's office, it was the 9 to 5, but then like, he was great to learn from because he was technically like deep, right? So it's like, and then I saw how that technical depth interacted with the market and the customer, and it was real time. And so it was just like matrix in the back of my head, and it's just like, I know judo now. Um, but now today is I try to find the flow state. I try to find the interesting thing because that interest will pull you forward instead of you having to like, oh God, I don't want to do this. And you have to listen to that. And so you're exploring, and then you catch fire and you're like, oh yes. And when you catch fire, you have to grab that thing as strongly as you can and go as hard and as long as you can because that fire is going to go out on whatever subject that is, topic area it is. So create, ingest, do as much as you can while that fire is burning, keep it alive. Because if you go too long down another path, it's going to be really hard for you to go back to that fire area, even though it seems like I could do this forever. So just get in it, stay in it, and then it'll just kind of like naturally, everything in the universe has its own flow, right? It's like nothing comes up, goes away. Profit pools, businesses, everything, interest level, trends on the internet. So it's just, there's this old book, it's called Exploration, then Exploitation. I don't like that second word, exploitation, but the concept, it's like exploration then execution is maybe a better term, although that has some negative connotations too. It's like you're searching and then you're doing. And this goes back to
Execution.
yeah, well, what I was going to do
Exploration and
is
then execution.
if you remember Karate Kid, wax on, wax
Wax
off,
off.
like I'm going to
Yeah.
take it full circle here. So, yeah, so wax on, wax off. Like you got to just go like find what gets you going and then you got to do the thing. And then find the next thing and just try to stay in that flow state. Music can help get you there, surfing the internet can get you there. But point it in a direction that provides value to you and to others, ideally. And that's your conscious job, is to make sure you're pointed in the right direction. You point this thing, just try to find the interest and use that as the fuel to get you toward that thing.
I
That
love
I
that,
think is the
Sean.
key. Yeah.
No, that's
I'm
very
still figuring
powerful.
it out, man. I'm still figuring it out. So I don't have it all. I don't have it all done, but it seems to be working. So we're gonna keep going until I find something better.
I love it and I love the humility. So you touched on fire. You know, a lot of people in the finance space, personal finance space, maybe they're on the internet, etc. When they hear fire, they think financial independence, retire early. That retire early part is understood differently. But from my perspective, when you hit a point where you no longer have to worry about money, you no longer have to put food on your plate or pay your next bill or whatever it is, you start hitting a peak flow where you can really optimize for other avenues of growth, let's say medium term, long term, because you no longer need to have to focus on your short term survival needs. Help me understand how you've seen that manifest in your own life, Sean.
Yeah, I didn't start with a lot of money. I was grew up in a small town in Iowa, right? Like I remember going to the grocery store. I mean, my first job I was making 5.85 an hour. My first paycheck was $80. Like I was getting grocery carts out of the parking lot of Hy-Vee in Iowa. Like it's not fun. Like you have to do three jobs. My whole life I've been doing three jobs at once and it compounds. But I think this idea of freedom, I've thought a lot about it. I think it really just comes down to I don't want someone telling me what to do at a point in time. I want to be able to set my own schedule and do what I want to do when I want to do it. And that can, at least for me, it's about a balance and a flow state of life, creation and those things back and forth. And work is in that creation thing for me. So I've just been trying to get closer and closer and converge all of these things together where it's like I'm living my best life. And as a part of that, I am doing things that fulfill myself, fulfill others. I can earn an income, all that sort of thing. And that's really hard to do. I still every day am trying to get closer and closer and closer to that. But I think that's the dream. And so what does retirement mean? Like, what do you want to do? Are you just going to sit there and watch TV all day? At some point, you're going to get bored. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You're going to get sick of doing that one thing forever. So, I mean, maybe not. Maybe you can sit on a beach for 14 hours a day and not move. Not me. So it's really like, what does retirement mean to you? Like, map it out physically. What does your day look like for a month straight? Map out every single day for a month. In your best case world, what does that look like? And do it for a year. And then go, okay, I bought all this stuff. I went on all these trips. Like I just lounged forever. Then what? My question to you is what comes after the then what? Because that's where you should be shooting for. Because then you never work a day in your life and you never retire because you never have to. So my question is, what's after the then what? That's what
I
I'm
think that's a great
seeking.
question, Sean. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'll share my perspective if that's okay with you.
Yes, please. I want to hear.
I think the then what is all based on the product you built. Right before we were talking about product design, and right now we're talking about retiring early. And I think that's sometimes what people maybe don't understand. Like if you're young, hungry, curious about the world like Sean, the financial independence matters because then you're then what is whatever you want, right? Like for me, this podcast is part of my retirement, not to monetize off the podcast, but to do exactly what Sean mentioned. To say, hey, fundamentally, you're not going to look to shove a product down people's throats. You're going to look to understand core human behavior. In that first example of different clients, Sean mentioned the client that needs help but doesn't realize they need help. They don't know what they don't know. So you can shine a light and tell them this is what you need, but they're not ready to hear it. So you don't. You just have an education funnel that educates them on what they need instead of, wasting your time and their time. And then when they're actually in distress, they come to you because they heard that education 2, 3 years ago. Now they're actually in distress where they realize they're in distress. They were always in distress, but now they know they have a problem. Now you can actually come and solve the problem. So it's low friction. And let's say you have another education product that also solves their problem, and that's infinitely
Mm-hmm.
scalable. So I think the then what is different for different people. I think for maybe people
Mm-hmm.
like you, Sean, and me, I don't think we're ever going to be happy or content. It's always going to be like, how can we grow? How can we scale? What else can we work on? There's insatiable curiosity. So our retirement is
That's
fundamentally, yeah, sorry, Sean. Yeah.
that's I hope I can find happiness, you know? Shoot,
I mean, I don't know.
shoot,
Like, I
bro.
think you find happiness in what you do, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's not meant to sound morbid. Uh huh.
No, there is a joy. For me, there's a joy in creation. I was actually chatting to ChatGPT about this like a couple days ago about like purpose. And
Uh
there
huh.
was three items that it gave like back to this conversation of at the core. One of them was like this idea of just creation, right? Like doing the things, like making the things. And other people have a different idea of that, which is like relationships and experiences, right? So instead of making things, I want to like experience the world and travel, right? And then there was a third one, which I forget right now. So maybe that's part of my
Was it?
problem. But
It wasn't good enough to remember from my
well,
perspective, Sean.
well, it was like those two things like are
It
very
resonated.
personal to my life. Yeah, and so I have experience in my personal life on kind of both of those fronts. So like I was like, ah, yeah, that is true. They aren't necessarily the same, but similar feelings and desires for the human, but different instantiations of those things, which is kind of interesting. We're all unique snowflakes, but in some ways we can be, we align on certain qualities.
And we all thrive at the same temperature and need the same environment to thrive. So I would say, Sean, that and then what kind of becomes a manifestation of the individual, right? Retirement doesn't necessarily mean not working. It means just enjoying your life. You can be enjoying your life and working, or you can be enjoying your life and doing something else. So I guess, Sean, one of the questions that I had for you is help me understand what you do professionally and how it differs or is similar from a firm like McKinsey or Bain or BCG.
Mhm. Yeah, so those three firms you cited are typically considered strategy firms. MBB, the top three. Um, those are typically at the board level, the executive level, and it's helped me figure out what to do with this business, typically for an outcome which is to drive growth for the business. Sometimes there's specialists which like, oh, we need to do a sustainability program or some other type of program, but that's really the idea. I specialize in technology businesses, especially like even zooming in further, emerging tech. So how do we apply emerging technologies? Right now that's AI, it's Bitcoin, it's augmented reality, it's spatial computing, digital assets, etc. And how do we apply that to a standard business to help them drive growth? And that can manifest itself in a couple different ways. One, we can develop a strategy for M&A, right? Like M&A is a growth driver. Two, pricing strategy. How do we price this thing? Three is we need to build something net new, a product, and that is either enabling our customers with new capabilities or it's enabling our employees in an internal way for improved operational efficiency. And so in my past I've also done incentive design, like incentive compensation design, which is about the longest lever you have to drive growth for massive global organizations. Like I went all the way up to the boardroom of the Fortune 1. And in that case, it's like you've got 1 million employees. You can't just send an email and go, hey, everybody go do this. Like it just like it doesn't work. Like management breaks down at 1 million employees. So you have to find incentives for to have people do the things and get pointed in the direction that your corporate strategy is pointed. So you end up in the promised land instead of like, sunk at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. So that's the whole idea. Those are some broad scope things, and then from the highest level to the next level to the third level, zoom all the way down. So it's like which level do you need to operate in, and then along which dimension. And so sometimes people say you have to be T-shaped. You've heard this term, where you got to be deep in one area and broad in another. I actually say you have to be tic-tac-toe shaped, which means you got to be deep, you got to be broad in multiple areas and deep in multiple areas. And then I think the best in the world is you just have to be like chessboard shaped, right? I mean, you got to be deep in every area, broad at every single level, and then you can pull on experience because you notice a hole in one thing and you're like, oh, I have the perfect block for this. Put that in right there, and then bang, the whole thing energizes and you're off to the races. So you just have to be around enough and have been doing this long enough that you can spot those things and like pull from this bag of tricks and then like insert that thing in there. And then it's like pretty sure that has a high probability of success. Do it in a safe way, put it out there, check it. Yeah. All right, cool. Keep going. Let's go. So does that make
That's
sense?
Sean, and I love the analogies. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Help us understand what makes a good client for you, Sean. How would they know that you're a good partner for them? What types
Hmm.
of problems do they typically have that you can pull from because you already have this grandmaster chessboard and you've been doing this for years?
First one, strong core values, full stop, period,
But
exclamation
everyone
point,
has strong core
double underline.
values.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
unpack it. Everyone would tell you that they have strong core values.
Yep. This is what I mean. I've been saying this for a while. So I want you to imagine who you are at your core. And I'm going to ask you a question. Have you gone to a whiteboard and designed who you are at your core? Did you program how you feel into your own DNA and subconscious? Did you do that, or has it always been there? Has you always been you?
No,
You know?
I have not always been me. I'm constantly
Okay.
iterating. And I think it might not have been a whiteboard, but it was definitely, a piece of paper to say,
So
like,
you've
what do I
ch-
actually care about?
so you've changed the core of who you are.
I think so. But that might be
Really?
arrogant, but I think so.
What was the change?
I think the change was realizing where I am, where I want to be, what do I actually care about? Am I actually acting in alignment with what I care about? If I'm not acting in alignment, then do I actually care about what I think I care about?
So then what was the change from what you cared about? Did it change? And was it, here's my question, right? So
Yeah.
so there's a core and then there's something around the outside. And so basically it was like, oh, I only care about money. Now I care about helping animals, right? But at the inside, was it, this was misaligned with what's in here? So my question is, was what in here changed at the
No,
absolute
I don't
atomic
think so.
unit of who you are?
I don't think so. I think
You
that there
just
was a
like
layer.
uncovered.
Exactly. There was a layer of
Mm-hmm.
fog from my perspective. And this kind of circles back to what we were talking about, like my version of fire, my version of freedom, my version of doing what you want to do at your core. Right? It's to say that,
Mm-hmm.
most people have different levels of needs. Let's think of, Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, you might be working a job because you need to put food on your table. You mentioned working 3 jobs. I think somebody living in 2025 might struggle to put food on their plate if they're only working one job and they have a family of
Mm-hmm.
3. So you might need to
Yep.
work multiple jobs. But do you live to work or do you work to live? Right? There's two, different perspectives. And I think in America, living in like a very capitalistic society, it's very easy for us to
Mm-hmm.
identify ourselves as our job, which you are not your job fundamentally. So I think for me, Sean, it was, hey, what do I want to do? Fundamentally, I want to help people. How do I want to help people? I don't know. I went down one path, becoming a doctor. And I was like, this is definitely not what I want to do. I do not want to be a doctor to help people. I want to help people faster and at more scale. And so
Mm-hmm.
then that led me to financial literacy, which is why I run a podcast. But I also run an investment firm. I do other things
Mm-hmm.
other than just the podcast. So it's like, how do you scale that vision? If at your core you want to help people, and if at your core you believe that people don't want to be helped, which is similar to your business, people, they want to be helped, but they don't want to be helped. There's so many different
Mm-hmm.
gaps to help for them to help themselves. So how do you unpack that? How do you help them on their terms? To me, it's by having an omnipresent approach, an omni-channel approach, where people can consume different types of content that are all fundamentally designed to do the same thing: help them understand how money works so that they can empower themselves, so that they can make money, so that then they can use money instead of being enslaved by money. And so
Mm-hmm.
for me, Sean, I think it's just about self-discovery and kind of saying, hey, if I'm working in that pharmaceutical industry, 9 to 5 job, I'm not going to be in alignment at the scale that I want to. Sure, I'm helping drug development. Sure, I'm helping save lives, etc. But I'm looking to do it
Mm-hmm.
at more scale. And that's why for me, those pivots were really essential. But fundamentally, if you told somebody, hey, this guy studied genetics and minored in religion, and now he manages multi-million dollars in real estate, there's a huge jump and a disconnect that doesn't make sense to people. But I'm not in real estate for the money. I'm in real estate
Mm-hmm.
because it's the most scalable asset class, in my humble opinion, to help empower people to control their finances. But I'm happy for you to kind of break it down and tell me where my gaps are.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, you've pulled back the covers and you've tried to become more authentic to who you are. And that, I think, is the point, which is that true you, that true, authentic you, when no one's around, no one's listening, there's no social media, it's quiet, there's no television, there's no computers, you're sitting alone in a forest and it's just you. Who are you in that point? And I think that is amazing. I am very aligned with that. And those are the people that I like to work with. The problem is on the business side, we all sit in a boardroom or a conference room with a whiteboard and we go, what's the best core values that's going to help us sell our widget more than the competitor does? We're going to have better core values than they do. And look at our core values and look at our ego. And I'll give you a perfect example of this. And I'm going to beat up, and I'm sorry if you're in the beauty industry, but I'm going to beat up the beauty industry. I've seen too many briefs land across our desk that say authenticity. We want this thing to be authenticity at its core. And really all they're trying to do is just like sell more units. And like, then be upfront about it. You're just trying to sell units. You don't actually care. And so it's like, oh yeah, we want to help people. And it's like, here's a perfect example. I'm going to give you a perfect example of this. A brand guideline was, yeah, we're in this for authentic people to help uplift people. Everything was written, it was perfect. And the idea was, hey, instead of like spending money for this weird pop-up that's going to go away tomorrow and it's like a piece of cardboard or like a truck that just gets wrapped and like some other stuff with some giveaways and you design the interior of it fine and like a beauty makeup station. Why don't we actually go and set up a homeless shelter with that exact same money?
It's completely
What's your
different.
core values? What's your
And
core
one is
values? Are your
exponential.
core values, yeah, are your core values just to push product and screw your customer? Like just give us your money because I'm a taker? Or is your core value actually to empower people, improve their lives, give them a sense of self-worth? Now we've made an investment in this community. We put our name on it. We gave some product there. Now our product stands for something. And you know where it starts? It starts with the executive team because they make the decision. It starts with the CMO. And what kind of CMO are you? Are you the CMO who's just pushing product and like getting that bonus check? Or are you actually going to take a stand in your industry and be different? You're looking for marketing, you're looking for PR, you're looking for media exposure, then do something different. And in this case, do something different that actually helps people in a meaningful way. But you got to get clear about your core values as an individual first and embed those into your company and then embed those into your product. So you ask me, how do companies work with us? And again, I say, what are your core values and are they strong? And by strong, I mean you know who you are and why you exist and what you're doing. And I don't mean we're just here to push product to make a bunch of money and be the richest person in a grave. I'm not here for that. Like you can there's plenty of other people that can go do that. But we need some people in the resistance. So if you want to fight for the resistance, come fight for the resistance. Because you know what? The dark side always loses in the end anyways. But
Sean, I
that's
love
just
it.
my opinion.
No, I love it. So, Sean, I'm going to kind of dive deeper a little bit on this question because the conversation has been awesome. I really appreciated this question specifically in your answer. Have you heard of the concept of this purple elephant?
Yeah, is that what's the G guy's name? The
So I heard
author.
Mr. Beast say it. He's a very
Oh, it's Mr.
popular.
Beast. I was thinking
I
Seth
think so.
Godin. He had a
Uh,
book. Yeah. Go ahead.
maybe him as well. I don't know. Sometimes one person makes the statement, other people use the statement. So I'm just going to be the person using the statement. I think I heard it from Mr. Beast, basically saying the secret behind all of his virality is doing things that no one has ever done before. You kind
Yeah,
of
right.
alluded to a similar mentality with the CMO to say, hey, stop doing what everyone else is doing. Stop maybe choosing the easy, lazy approach that's not really in alignment with your values, but looks like it's in alignment with your values. And maybe your values are fake just because that's what you think the market values, right? But Mr. Beast is fundamentally saying, hey, create something that's never existed before, right? For that beauty example you mentioned, investing in a homeless shelter versus just wrapping another truck, which everyone does. For a lot of people, like I'm not in the beauty industry, I'm not a master marketer. I know people who wrap, so I know people who would wrap trucks, etc. Um, from my perspective, why do you think it is that CMOs don't make this crazy leap to say, hey, we're not going to invest in something short term. We're not going to do a pop up or whatever. We're not going to, drop shoes or whatever like Supreme might do, etc. We're going to go and invest in this homeless shelter. And maybe that's going to be a long play. Maybe it's going to be a short term play. Maybe we're going to monetize initially. Maybe we're going to monetize down the
Hmm.
line. Is it just that the strategy doesn't occur to them because their MBA program never taught them how to think like this? Or, help me understand where is the
Yep.
gap? Because if you told them
Yep.
that this will make them more money, and if they hired you, in theory, you have some buy-in where they would listen to your advice. So I'm trying to understand, where's the gap, Sean, for people?
Hmm. Yep. So I beat up the CMO. So now we're going to bring the CMO back to life, and I'm going to fight for the CMO. So the CMO's job is really challenging. The business is beating them up, saying, "Give me leads, more, higher conversion rates, push that purchase conversion rate, more. Hey, this new platform thing. Hey, did you see this social thing? How many influencers do we have? Hey, don't screw up our brand. Oh my God, did you see this thing? Like we're screwed. Like let's get PR agency on the line and do some like damage control." And so, literally, the job of the CMO is like just give me a glass of wine at the end of the night and like leave me alone because I just can't anymore. I just got to like close this laptop and I just need a moment of zen. So it ain't easy. Um, and that affords you zero time to be creative, right? Like I know somebody who I respect quite a bit in this world, and she will always more 100 times I've heard her say, "There's nothing harder than being creative on a deadline." So like, hey, you got 5 minutes. Come up with the world's best idea. Go. Oh, clock's ticking. Hey, you done with that great idea yet? Go. That's hard. That's really hard. So I think that's why the agency world, like the ad agency world, exists because it's just like I need extra pair of hands. I need some creative on demand. Like I just here, please help. I got all this stuff I'm trying to deal with, and I've got a ton of these things. So I've got a ton of agencies that are helping. So it's a challenging role. But I think the thing you have to do is you gotta have someone's voice who says, hit the brakes. I have a view across this whole industry and I'm seeing everything coming and everything's the same. And the CMO may not have that same view. They're focused on their company and their business and their divisions, right? And their product lines. They're not outside at scale. And sure, they get like news alerts and social and trends alert and all that stuff and like whatever. But I think it takes a voice of reason to go, you know what? Like, we need to pause. We need to take a strong look at our values, see where we're aligned, and do some actual strategy work, which is just competitive dynamics, just a competitive analysis. And then you got to step back and go, well, throw all the competitive analysis away. And what I really need is I need an artist's mind. I need thinking that hasn't ever existed and is going to come at this problem from a perpendicular angle. So think perpendicular, don't think different. And so it's just like, how big are you thinking? How different are you thinking? How creatively are you thinking? And then just like pull it all together back onto like business execution and then like launch it. So,
I love that.
you
And for
know,
that amazing, yeah, for that amazing CMO, maybe I have some advice. Number one, it can be very valuable to slow down, but no one ever talks about that when you're scaling and growing a business. But imagine you're driving down that highway 100 miles an hour. You're definitely going to miss your exit, 100%. You need to slow down to know when to strategically exit and strategically pivot and strategically reach your customer. And also, if you follow, Sean's advice earlier, and you have a omnipresent approach of learning, a multi-everything approach, then you can just talent stack. You can take what works in one industry that's different than yours, that's targeting the similar customer, and apply it to your own industry. And it can maybe be a bit more efficient in terms of you being creative. I found that to be very, very helpful when aggressively growing a company. So Sean, you talked a lot about the advice, when we started the conversation, the advice, for your dog slash, that fifth grader. For you, if you were, mentoring somebody, what type of advice would you give them to help them aggressively scale?
yeah, I am working with a chap right now, and he wanted some help and some mentorship. I'm really just trying to push his thinking. Um, it's hard. It's a hard thing because it's like you got to meet folks where they are, and then you got to try to figure out like you have to help them and help me figure out like what vector you want to go on, and then like come at it from a what aren't we thinking about? Like what are the blind spots? So it's an interesting, it's not one of those things where I could give you a direct answer. It's kind of more, you almost have to be exploratory. But then once you do find the thing, then you have to work to get surety on the thing. And once you have surety, or conviction is another good word, once you find that conviction, then it's just go. Like, damn all the rest. So, exploration, validate conviction, have conviction, execution.
Love that, Sean. And I feel like your answer resonates for every parent that wants the best for their kid. How do you define what's best for your kid? Is it your kid telling you? Is it you telling them? It's a bit opaque. Or for that business owner saying, hey, what's the best way to help my employees scale? My employee might not be the best suited for the role that they're in or the responsibility they're in. Or for me,
Mm-hmm.
my personal favorite is charity. Like, what's the best way to help people? Is it food? Is it water? Is it shelter? Is it education? Is it just following your hierarchy of needs? How do you, make it more scalable? Maybe, microfinance, etc. So that, answer can look different for everybody. Sean, I really enjoyed our conversation today, and I think the audience has found a lot of value as well. If somebody's listening to this episode and they wanted to connect with you, learn more about the services you offer, what is the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, you can just find me on LinkedIn. That's probably easiest. You can just search for me. Most folks in the business community have LinkedIn. Otherwise, you can like head over to our website, avergence.team. And we're always playing around with stuff over there. Like it's my playground, and it always will
Awesome.
be. Yeah, it's fun stuff. So you might see glimpses of the future coming at you, but it could also make you go crazy. So be careful what you wish for.
Awesome. So if you're trying to go crazy, trying to scale
Yeah.
aggressively, but notice you're hitting
Yeah.
a couple roadblocks, and you just want, a guide, not necessarily a guru, but a guide to make the path more efficient, we'll drop those links in the chat below, in the description below. That way it can help you scale more efficiently. Sean, thanks again for this conversation. What I've loved about it is shows that, growth isn't simple, but it also doesn't just collapse overnight. Those challenges happen because people lack ambition and they don't always know how to execute efficiently when things get complex. So Sean, thanks for breaking down how scaling actually works when products, teams, and capital collide at speed. Thanks for sharing how real growth decisions are made. And if this episode sharpened your thinking, follow MyFinJourney and share it with a founder, a business owner, or a person just looking to grow. Until next time, I'm your host, Mustafa Ladha, signing off. Bye, guys.